right. We returned to the city of Lincoln in the following nights, after the Gauntlet had just had this meeting with Colton Sardini, who hinted at some very ominous plans in the near future. So several nights will pass before Robert DeVere must leave with the force to detain the fledgling Amelia, with the instruction to return her to the Covenant's holding in Salisbury. During this time, what will the Gauntlet try to do? Let's start with Cormac de Courcy. We have 3 nights.
Three nights to use up, huh? I cannot think of a darned thing that Cormac wants to do that he hasn't already done here.
Well, that's fine. If you just want to maintain your blood through feeding and keeping a low profile, that's also fine.
That's what he'll do until they're ready to go.
Alright. And Elenid, anything you want to try and accomplish in these next few nights? You do expect that your ghoul, Gertrude, will be arriving soon.
Multitude of things. Keeping an eye out for her ghoul, of course. Upkeeping what blood she needs for feeding. She needs, well, Thomas wanted her to write that letter to try to rally what forces she could so they wouldn't be completely flat-footed when they met this band of the discontent later on. Which she will be writing that. And the last one is working on that poetry thing for the poetry lover. She's convinced it's nothing that would be deemed important to the meeting. It's more for the flavor's sake.
We can start with the letter to the mercenaries. You know, just from experience, you found this band because they were traveling from inn to inn, tavern to tavern, gathering men who wanted to join the mercenary band. They don't really have a stronghold with which you can write to. They kind of travel nomadically until or as they are hired by lords, and otherwise are very difficult to pin down. So your best bet would be to return to the tavern that you found them in Bristol, in the hopes that whatever descendant or eventual successor as captain of this mercenary band would return there to recruit, if they were recruiting, which you think is likely given the current climate of events. But a letter would not be very effective in this point.
Alright, I just figured I'd attempt to see if she gained any way to contact them over the years.
The captain whom you were most familiar, whom you worked with,
is probably long dead.
Yes, you recall he retired, happy with the money you had earned him, and after that it was handed down to kind of a lieutenant that had been promising, and who knows who it got handed down to after that. You didn't really stay in touch after that because you joined up with the English armies and generals.
Fair enough.
As for the poetry, you and Robert can give me a combined... let's see.
Can I use expression with my newfound specialty?
You may use expression. I will have you do a... wits expression. Difficulty 6. You can both work on this together. So I'll take your total successes into account.
What's expression?
Mm-hmm.
And as a general factoid for things that got spent, she does have a specialty in poetry.
So that's actually 6 successes for you. And Robert, 1 success. So 7 between the two of you. Elenid does the heavy lifting here. What's the general theme or idea behind the poem? Or what's the topic or subject?
Well, the person who she met in London mentioned that they prefer happy poems, so a general happier feel to it, not necessarily sticking on the sadder tones. However, for the topic, that would be more something brainstormed.
What kind of topic would Robert want to make a poem about?
Happy poem?
If only because the guy's contact says he prefers the one in London at least prefers happy poems.
Yeah, the general beauty of nature, of... Britain, why not?
Sure, why not?
Okay. So the two of you construct a fairly well-written poem on some of the nature of England as the two of you have seen it. It comes out fairly nicely, mostly due to Elenid's efforts. And you feel like even if it's not going to be published or make you famous, it certainly has some cleverness, some charm to it, that you're both pretty confident in it. And Robert, besides writing this poem with Elenid, or letting her doing a lot of the writing for you, what do you mean to do in the nights leading up to your departure?
He will spend some more time with his grandsire. Try to get to know him better.
To what end?
Mainly to get to know him better so we can make more informed decisions about him.
Okay. I will take a manipulation empathy difficulty 6. It's not very difficult since he trusts you a lot. Oh, wow. Do you have any specialties?
For
Anything
empathy,
involved?
not in, well, truths, but I guess that could apply.
He's not really trying to lie to you, and this is more of an information gathering, so I'm going to say no in this case, but 4 successes is still significant. Spending this time, this quality time with your grandsire, you are picking up on a few more things than you weren't able to really detect in your previous meetings, which were much more objective, more focused in nature, or very tense. You're learning that he's much more anxious and paranoid than you recall in years past. Of course, you probably noticed that even during your meetings with the Gauntlet. He seems overly paranoid about something, but You, because you were so successful, you suspect it has something to do with this business that you learned something about between him and Gaetan. He's very reluctant to speak on anything about business in general. He's become a lot more reclusive about those topics, about finances. Let me see, what else? You got quite a few successes. He comments sometimes on his growing distrust of Ragna despite his dependence upon her because of her growing restlessness and her recurrent attempts to spread further south from York, which is already the single largest county in all of England, which by right is her fief. And you know that there's been some ongoing tension between the two of them in the courts resettling the county lines. He kind of laments a bit more on that. And during this time he takes you riding, and you see that one of the few things he seems to still enjoy in this world is his prized jet black stallion, this Andalusian horse called Medianoche. You saw it as you came into Lincoln the first night. It's almost entirely black except for this white-colored birthmark that looks like a spade. And he tells you about this grand story of his going to Barcelona and winning a bet with some gangrel for it. So he speaks often about his horse and horses and heavy cavalry not being used enough by the Spanish, and if you get him talking about horses enough, then he seems to lighten up a lot, and that's when you start to gain more of his trust. So you're very successful in getting to know him better, getting him to open up more. Of course, he already trusts you, and spending some time with him does much to help that. And Thomas, do you have any specific goals in the next few nights?
Well, since no one else has brought it up, I did want to try and get a meeting with Jean-Marc, preferably with another member of the Gauntlet, if not everyone. Since we did hear about an imminent threat posed by certain individuals last session.
Okay. Who is willing to join Thomas at this meeting?
Preferably someone who is also there with Sardini.
Yeah, this is news to Robert when you hear about this imminent threat.
How much leftover time would Elened have for going to that after everything she planned to do over the 3 days?
Well, really all you did was do some hunting and working on the poetry, since you couldn't make much progress on the mercenaries. So you would have quite a bit of time.
Alright.
Does Cormac or Robert attend?
Was the general feel that Sardini was more tight-lipped when Robert was there?
The general feel was that Sardini would more likely to hold back if Robert had been there. He definitely put off the vibe that he was more open to sharing while Robert wasn't there.
And this meeting is to what end?
To tell Jean-Marc about what Sardini had said.
Oh. Okay. In that case, yeah, Robert would be interested.
I suppose Cormac would go as well, but he would caution them that he has already talked to Hugh about discussing this with the prince, and that anything that we might say might undermine what he's done already. As they already know that Sardini and his master are a threat, and the prince just does not seem to care.
Well, all we can do is try.
And if you know him well enough, then perhaps you can speak in such a way that will not undermine what he may be doing.
Jean-Marc is many things, but stupid is not one of them. He knows who my sire is, and he knows I have his ear.
But he is also brash, passionate, and I believe he has overreacted in this.
I have aired my cautions.
And I thank you for them. Thomas, however, is still going to request an audience.
All right. You are granted it, although at a delay. He is willing to hear you out on this last night, which, by all sounds, it seems that this is the night that the scouting parties and Robert will be departing. So we will transition as you are granted your audience. So as in times past, you are led up the tower to the top, where Jean-Marc awaits you, and you're led into this large room with those large windows looking out in almost every direction. Jean-Marc sits at the end of his long table, and from far across the room he makes a faint gesture to the seats along the table for the four of you to enter. Reynald Rui, his ghoul and seneschal, is once again not far away.
My thanks for granting this audience, Your Grace.
He says nothing. He has a very grim look when he looks to you, waiting for the group of you to enter and sit down.
Robert will step in and sit down.
As does Cormac quietly.
Elened will as well.
Thomas will deliberately not take the seat at the head, or the opposing head of the table, rather.
As you know, there are many preparations to be made before Robert departs this evening. What is this about?
Precisely about those preparations. On a suspicion, we met with an individual within your domain. I believe you know Mr. Colton Sardini.
I know him.
It seems he has taken note of the preparations in question.
I am sure many in the city have taken note of this.
Whether directly at the behest of his sire or due to his own ambitions, he has alluded to his own intent while the majority of your retinue is away.
And what intent is that?
He did not come out directly and say such, but he alluded to the death of Cornelius.
His eyes narrow at you, and then scan the other faces of each of you.
Cormac will meet his gaze with no visible expression.
For the most part, Robert's just listening thoughtfully.
Elened will as well. However, her usual polite smile is replaced with a more serious expression.
That is a very serious accusation to make. I am aware of the aspirations of Colton and his sire. That would be a very brazen thing for them to attempt to do. I do not take them for fools.
But perhaps they take you for one.
He shifts in his seat slightly. What would they do? Storm the barracks with what?
Colton has observed that Cornelius is very rarely far from your side. I believe he would mean to have potentially a single individual strike him down while he is out with you. If I were a powerful prince in a key domain with a seat on the Covenant, such a strike so close to my heart, as he believes that Cornelius holds a good deal of your affections, I believe I would take that as a very serious threat and become quite insular, perhaps even paranoid. Perhaps even to the point of casting distrust on my fellow Covenant princes. And I believe this would be where Lady Everly would step in.
It is timely that you bring these concerns to me, after one of my own advisors already convinced me to retain some of my retinue.
A wise man.
On that note, Robert, your detachments will be reduced from 50 to 20. They should still be sufficient.
If I may speak in my own defense,
And he turns slowly to you.
I understand that my choice to withhold certain details of our investigation appeared unseemly. My choice to not share those details was precisely because I feared this reaction. And I did not wish to be the cause of increasing tensions within a prince's domain based on incomplete suspicions and circumstantial evidence.
It was more than unseemly, it is very concerning. And there are other princes who have more harsh interpretations of your decision to hide the meeting with Robert de Four and this group. And he folds his arms. I would be very careful about making similar decisions going forward. Some may begin to question your allegiance.
My allegiance is to Britain.
Your allegiance should be to the Covenant.
Are they not one and the same?
The Covenant serves England. You serve the Covenant. We decide how to protect this country, to protect this land.
And you, in your wisdom, have empowered us to complete this investigation.
We instructed you to find and detain Robert de Four. At the first given chance, you did not.
Their forces were too great. We would have been cut and fallen, one and all.
And instead of requesting forces at London's court, you said nothing, apparently.
The group had departed by the time we were able to respond, and we feared for our own lives should they return in force. When we returned to London, Ambrose's return was late, and our ability to gain an audience with him was delayed.
Make a manipulation subterfuge roll, difficulty 8.
Why, that was true.
Humor me.
Fair enough.
His eyes focus in on you with weight, like you felt the first time that you were presented before the Covenant. You are very well practiced and skilled in the way that you phrase your reasons, your justification. I hope not to hear more of these attempts. The next time I find out you encountered Robert the Fool or this group, I hope I do not have to hear it secondhand. That you present it the first time.
As you say.
As for Everly and Sardini, I am not worried about either of them, nor am I worried about Cornelius. I thank you for voicing your concern and bringing this to my attention, but it is unnecessary.
I hope that you are right, and if I am wrong, then I hope that they have overestimated his value to you.
Is there anything else? And his eyes turn to the group of you again.
No, not that I can officially note outside of leaving shortly to look into this potential of enemies within London.
Robert just smiles and shakes his head no.
Oh. During our discussion with Sardini, we alluded to the notion that your forces might be heading for Lancaster to put down a Percy Neville force feuding in the area. It might provide smokescreen should you wish to reposition yourself.
He smirks when he looks at you. If there is nothing else, Robert, I think you have a departure to make.
That I do.
I have business of my own to attend to.
By your leave, then, your grace.
And he rises from his seat.
Thomas also rises and bows.
Cormac rises and bows as well.
Eleanor will do so as well.
As will Robert.
And he stands there waiting expectantly for the group of you to leave.
And leaves.
And Tom will follow Robert out.
Yep.
Yeah,
Excuse yourself and leave.
Cormac's not sticking around for this.
Alright. So the group of you make your way out, watched by both Jean-Marc and Renaud, and make your way out of the tower. And you descend to the base, kind of one of the larger main chambers at the base of this tower, close to the large double door that leads in. And you have some time alone to discuss what will happen next. Unless you all go your separate ways.
No, Cormac has a few words to speak with Tom if the others choose to stay.
Has Eleanor heard anything about her ghoul yet?
Not yet, but she must be here soon. Unless something's happened. Alright, so then you're all together.
Thomas is going to make sure they're out of earshot of any guards, probably walking away from the tower in the castle, so they can talk apart.
Yeah, you'll have to leave the castle if you want to speak away from the guards. So we'll say you go through the double doors out into the road that leads up to it, and you're farther away from the guards.
Is it just Tom and Cormac?
The group of you, no one said anything about leaving or doing anything else. So I assume you're all together.
As I cautioned you, Thomas, that did not get much accomplished.
He is aware of the threat,
He's
That's
always
all we-
been aware of the threat.
but now he is aware of the very specific threat and the disinformation that we provided.
Come now, Thomas, I don't take you for a fool. Sardini didn't believe for a moment what you told him about the Lancasters. He knows something else is going on.
All I can do is provide the information.
And hope it sticks like shite to a horse's arse.
And hope Jean-Marc takes heed of it. I know he has the means and the experience, the intellect to apply it. Does he have the will or the desire? I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised if he thinks that we're plotting against him. Withholding information.
I think this has done much to at least ease him a bit.
I only hope so.
Thomas gives Robert a very, very sardonic glance, as if he doesn't believe a word that he just said. He's an elder and a prince. He thinks everyone's plotting against him.
Well, in our time as what we are, do you not get suspicious of other people?
Suspicion breeds paranoia, and paranoia comes with age. As of right now, I'm only aware of a dozen or so threats to me directly.
In any case, Robert, you have preparations to make, as do we. We'll have plenty of time to dwell on this on our way out of town.
That we will.
But I suggest we all watch our backs from here on out.
Thomas taps a finger to the tip of his nose and then points at Cormac.
I wouldn't be surprised if Sardini has something in store for us as well.
I was never not watching my back.
Hopefully, Elenid's carriage has arrived and we can quit this city.
That is what I'm setting out to check on.
And perhaps I should return to the manor and make sure everything is in readiness.
I think all three of us shall, as Robert goes to prepare himself. I do feel bad that you're going alone. Do feel free to make use of my manor while you're in London.
Much appreciated. I will do my best to stay safe.
And do try not to create too much of a scene, eh?
Of course. Hopefully things will go as planned.
Ever the optimist.
Thomas chuckles as he was about to express a very similar sentiment.
It makes things easier to stay on the positive.
Until everything turns to shite. And then that makes things very, very difficult.
But then you still stay positive about that and deal with the situation.
I'm positive everything has turned to shite. An excellent perspective. Was the sarcasm too thick there?
The same could be said about too much negativity. Lest we all become paranoid wrecks.
My father raised me to be a pragmatist. I don't look at the positive or the negative. I look at the real.
Time's a wasting.
True enough.
I must be off.
As must we all.
With that, Robert will depart.
Thomas will step back and gesture for Elenid and Cormac to lead the way back to the De Vere Manor.
Which Cormac is all too happy to do, asking Ellen on the way. Is she to meet us at the manor? Your ghoul, I mean. Or is there somewhere you wish to make the drop-off?
So... that. There is somewhere that I would like to check first.
Elenid, given that you've known Gertrude long enough and you've traveled enough, you suspect she's savvy enough to check in with probably the local Elysium of major cities that you're aware of, and be directed from there. So you suspect that if she would arrive, she could probably find her way to Elysium here, and from there, hopefully get directions on where the Gauntlet is staying.
Alright. Well, with how long I've been around her, she is most likely to go to Elysium. I know she is to arrive soon, unless there were travel delays.
When aren't there travel delays?
That is fair.
She's a shrewd woman, your ghoul.
Very shrewd. Quite the socialite as well.
I would propose that one of us ought to return to the De Vere's manor, finish gathering many belongings and packing what have you. The rest should check Elysium to see if she's yet delayed there, or just arriving.
Yes, that does sound like it works out.
Agreed.
And whoever finds her can meet the other. She's your ghoul, though. Where would you rather go?
I would prefer to go there to attempt to meet with her at Elysium.
He cocked an eye at Cormac. And you, sir?
I have no opinion. Where do you think I should go? I haven't much to pack, I'll tell you that much.
I've a bit to finish. And if someone were going to attempt to do something foolish to a member of the Gauntlet alone, I think I might have the best chance of weathering it.
So you think I should go with Eleanor then?
If you don't mind.
He shrugs. I'm sure they'll love seeing my face at Elysium again. I always make such an impression.
You certainly made an impression on Bella Matea. He smirks.
Don't get me started.
She's a lovely girl.
Well then, Ellen, let's be off.
Yes, let's.
Thomas nods a bit. calls over his shoulder. It would be a smart match.
What are you on about now?
Oh, just a pairing that struck me as a smart match. Bella does like him young and spirited.
If I were you, I'd bite my tongue hard enough to lop it off.
He laughs very good-naturedly. Did you have someone else in mind?
I have nothing in mind that concerns Bella Matea.
I'll take that as a yes. He grins broadly and wheels on his heel to head towards De Vere's manor.
That arrogant bastard. Cormac watches him.
Now
Though.
it's all in good fun, even if he pokes a bit too harshly at times.
You should know me by now, Alanid. I don't like being poked.
I never said that poking you was a particularly smart thing to do. I merely said that's all it was.
Let's go see if we can find your Gertrude.
Preferably sooner rather than later.
Alright. So Thomas departs for Robert's manor as Cormac and Elenid make their way towards Elysium, and Robert himself, I assume, goes to the barracks to meet Sergeant Sears and depart.
Yes.
Okay. We'll start with Robert. Robert, you arrive at the barracks and are quickly found by Sergeant Sears, who alerts you that a carriage and 20 men are ready to deploy at your leave. And really, you can leave anytime you want now. They are all ready and armed and supplied and ready to go. Do you do anything else before you depart?
Here? Well, he would gather new funds for travel because he tapped himself out the last trip he made.
Okay. That makes sense.
Other than that, I believe he is good to go.
Okay. You depart in the carriage as a small procession of 20 men start moving down the roads out of the city, led by Sergeant Sears, who is mounted, and you in the carriage with several guards. And you depart into the evening at a slow pace, as traveling at night certainly is a much slower go than traveling during the day. Meanwhile, Thomas, you return to Robert's manor and find it quite absent, except for his many attendants, the staff, and of course, Francois de Maison, who is very busy. No new ghouls have arrived. And lastly, Cormac and Elenid, you arrive at Elysium, and we will open the scene there. Now we open the next scene in a fairly nice inn, definitely upper scale. There seems to be a number of gentry and perhaps even nobility gathered around. You think it could easily pass as one of their salons. There are attendants, but these are not the common barmaids and men carrying around large spilling or splashing tankards of ale. These are well-dressed individuals moving here and there, serving small meals and pouring out fine wines. The building itself is quite large, and it's definitely in what you would consider the nicer part of Lincoln, amongst some of the more well-appointed churches leading up to the cathedral itself. And so the two of you enter, and you see that it's still fairly busy, as the evening is still quite early. And there are a number of well-dressed men and women sharing quiet corners here and there. And you see a couple individuals who seem a little bit out of... they stick out somewhat from the rest of the scene. The first person you see amongst these that who stick out is a fairly gruff-looking man off in the corner. He looks older and certainly more of the hardier type, with short gray hair and a long face that looks aged and worn. And he's dressed fairly simply, especially in comparison to everyone else here, who seems to be in their finest tunics and dresses. He's dressed more, looks almost like a woodsman, and he has boots that have seen wear and a long coat that's slightly tattered at the end. And he seems to be leaning against a wall as he speaks to another person who looks a little bit out of place as well. You see a fairly young woman who is dressed very simply. She looks like she would be a simple maid if this place was a bit less extravagant. You don't think that she could be working here. She's not dressed well enough, and she's not moving any meals or drinks around. She's not attending. They're just speaking together, the two of them, off in a corner. And it's relatively quiet. This isn't one of the busier inns where everyone's drunk and laughing and gambling. This is a much more peaceful inn. Something of an uncommon find. And that is the scene as the two of you walk into this. And you catch a few looks from some of the people here, but mostly they stick to their own affairs.
Well, Elened will head over to the couple. Well, the two individuals speaking.
And Cormac?
He'll follow as well, his hands clenched behind his back, doing his best to look regal.
They both seem to notice you approach, and Gertrude does a double take when she sees you approach Elenid. And as you get close enough to speak at a level that wouldn't be distracting to draw attention, Gertrude smiles to you and does a brief curtsy. My lady, it is good to see you again after so long.
Elened returns the smile and a genuinely pleased smile outside of the usually forced one she normally maintains. Yes, it is very good to see you as well. How have you been faring?
Oh, I fared quite well, my lady. I would like to hear all about your visit. I apologize, my lord. I'm Gertrude de Ville. A pleasure to meet you. And she turns to you, Cormac.
Cormac de Courcy, and a pleasure to meet you as well. He'll hold out his hand to take hers.
And she takes it after a moment.
And he'll bow his forehead to her hand, and then let it go.
Meanwhile, this man to the side, this older, gruff-looking man, looks around at the group of you. I apologize. My lord, my lady, I am Pierce Lockwood. I was just informing Gertrude here of where to find her mistress. It is an honor to meet both of you.
It is a pleasure to meet you as well. And thank you for doing so.
I just arrived and I had heard of this place in the past as being useful for connections, and so I came here, and Mr. Lockwood was very quick with providing answers, my lady. He's quite a gentleman.
That is very nice to hear.
I sometimes wish that Elysium would be declared somewhere a little bit less inauspicious for us less fortunate folk to find each other, but it is as the prince desires.
I was thinking much the same thing as I entered.
Yes, I don't believe I am nearly, dressed up enough for an Elysium such as this.
What are those beautiful Asian birds called? The ones with the plumage.
I wouldn't know, my lord.
Peacocks, that's it. That's what this place reminded me of. A flock of peacocks.
Though, to be fair, describing his bird as having plumage is like saying the sky is blue.
Well, all the same, thank you, Mr. Lockwood, for your courtesy.
Of course. It is a pleasure to serve the Gauntlet, my lord, my lady. That being the case, I think I'll take my leave of this place now. It gets quite stuffy quite quickly for me.
Very well. We should be heading shortly as well.
A good evening to you, sir.
He bows his head to each of you. Safe travels.
To you as well.
He looks at each of you very intently before departing, and he makes his way through this crowd of gentry on his way out the way you came. Is there anything I can do for you, my lady?
Let's hold off on discussing that until we get back to the manor.
Oh, yes, of course. And she smiles and nods her head. And did the group of you return immediately?
That was Alned's intention.
And Cormac's as well.
All right. Perfect. And the scene fades. Elysium, watching the group of you follow after Pierce Lockwood, as he also makes his way out. And the group of you heading towards the manor. And at this point, I think we're going to take an early break, since it's about 7, and I use the restroom a lot. So we'll come back in 10 minutes, 15.
All
Sounds
right.
good.
Okay. Are we all here?
Hey,
I
yeah.
haven't been all here for years.
Well, that's good enough.
Wait, are we doing this on a sanity basis? Because, oh boy, taking care of your kids drains that.
I was locked in the house for 48 hours with no power and 2 teenagers. Come at me.
Nearly 8-year-old boy who was previously abused that has some serious personality issues because of it.
But did you have electricity?
Let's see, when was the last time the power went out? Last time power went out was sometime in August.
You have electricity to distract the 8-year-old.
When it isn't out.
But anyway, the important thing is to stay hydrated, so...
True.
Ready to get back into it?
Yeehaw!
Okay. All right. So we're going to look over this next week, as that is how long it's going to take Robert to travel down to London with his carriage and his retinue. Briefly, we'll look back at Lincoln and focus on Cormac, Elenid, and Thomas during this week. What all are you meaning to do? Are you meaning to leave or remain in Lincoln to see what Everly will do?
That was actually a question that Tom was going to propose to the other two.
Then we'll open up in the study of Roberts as the three of you are discussing your options at the onset of this week, as Long Tom proposes these ideas. And go ahead, Cormac.
All I was going to say is that Cormac would interject that the prince has been warned. There's nothing else they can do by staying here, and they should go.
Elena agrees.
In that case, since the young lady has already driven a carriage this far, if it's all the same to you, I'd be happy to take the night shift with the carriage and let her take the day. At least that way she can rest.
I'm not terrible at driving a carriage. I'm happy to do it.
But you've a horse.
With a lead rope? Why, do you want to drive?
It's no never mind to me either way. Just thought it might be more convenient to have an outrider just in case, especially at night.
You need to get better at saying what you mean, Thomas.
You are quite fond of the animal. Thought you might like to have the opportunity to bond a bit more. I didn't want to begrudge you of it.
We'll do what we must to arrive in timely fashion.
Yes, the sooner we find out about these supposed enemies, the better.
Can't say that I disagree.
Are we prepared to leave immediately?
Just so. I took the liberty of brushing out Bolt before he was saddled.
You did you?
The easier to make a short and hasty departure.
And did you massage his withers? He likes that.
Unfortunately, no. I was more concerned with making sure his coat was free of debris. I'd hate for him to get a sore from saddle rub.
I suppose that'll have to do.
Thomas grins a bit, shakes his head. In any event,
You don't have the strength in your hands that I do anyway. Get to those deep tissues.
Thomas arches a brow. I smell a challenge there, but I wouldn't want to. Never mind.
As a general question, how many days are left before Gertrude needs her next round of blood?
I'm not tracking that on a day-to-day basis, as long as you pay attention to it, which I assume you do. I'm not going to be
Yes.
accounting it, bookkeeping it very heavily.
Alright, I was just asking if that needed to be done before they went on the trip or not.
No, I'm not going to be that anal about making sure everyone has 30 days of Google blood or something happens.
Alright.
In that case, Thomas will go ahead and gather up whatever luggage is set out and bring it out to the carriage.
All right.
Elened will assist with that.
Yep, and Cormac as well. sooner they get on the road, the better.
You just look at a couple maps here. As you will not be traveling as the crow flies here.
Mm-hmm. Though while they travel, Elena does intend to catch up with Gertrude and try to see what all's been happening back home.
Absolutely. So, the difficulty with travel during this time is that from Lincoln to Chester lies an area called the Pennines, or the Pennines, depending on how you want to pronounce it, which is somewhat infamous for being kind of a group of large foothills from which lupines have been known to hunt from. That, combined with no major cities or towns, means there are no real roads or ways through the Pennines from Lincoln to Chester directly. The only real dirt roads that exist go south from Lincoln to Coventry and follow a river west towards a place called Ludlow Castle, not far from Gloucestershire and Bristol, and then you hook north up towards Chester. That also means you skirt Nottingham Forest, which is also not friendly towards Cainites during this time. All that to say, it will take about a fortnight to travel from Lincoln to Chester under ideal conditions. And you're all relatively aware of that, but I just wanted to make that a point. So you'll be spending that time traveling, and given that you are going along roads that are a bit more traveled instead of trying to rough it through the Pennines, there will be chances here and there where you stop at taverns along the more well-traveled roads, so hunting should not be difficult during this time. At least not overly difficult.
And hopefully hiring a few guides along the way to prevent outlaw attacks and such. A woman traveling alone during the day with a carriage. Perfect target.
Indeed it is. You don't have much to worry about going from Lincoln down to Coventry, as that's a very well-traveled road and better patrolled in England. You face more danger from Coventry following the river towards Worcester and Ludlow, going up to Chester, as you're going more into the woods and the forests as you go up some areas that are less well-traveled, less well-developed. Following up the River Severn. Do you continue with your plan to travel day and night?
Gertrude can drive it by day, and one of those who knows how to drive vehicles can drive it by night, so she can rest.
Okay, that's kind of what I assumed.
With an occasional stop or break so she can get something to eat, since she is still human.
Mm-hmm.
Would we not be passing through Birmingham?
Birmingham.
Alternatively, we could buy food before we go, salted meats and such, so she has things to eat on the way.
Yeah, I assume that you'd be supplying well for this.
Then Cormac's going to recommend for the safe part of the trip that they allow Gertrude to drive on her own during the day, but for the second half that they either travel only by night or hire someone to go with her.
I'm just double checking that Birmingham doesn't go by a different name during this time. Because I see it on the map. On a map. But not on others.
If the area is dangerous enough that they would have to get someone to protect her, Elined would prefer if they traveled by night while everyone was awake.
Nope, I just looked it up. It's always been called Birmingham.
Yeah, but it's west of Coventry, and as you go up north, you'd almost certainly, if you didn't come across it, you would at least pass by in near distance, although at this time it's a fairly small town of just 1,000 or so people. It's a fairly small development at this point. I will take a wit survival from each of you, though. Standard difficulty. Okay. Yeah, each of you are at least moderately successful in navigating these roads, especially the latter half, which is more questionable than the first half. And you do think it would be safer on one hand if you only traveled at night because you're all awake, as opposed to leaving your defenses to a single mortal woman. On the other hand, you know that at night, especially as you enter the woods, you could risk gaining more attention from the things which Canaanites fear most.
Cormac knows that all too well.
You think, each of you, that you would be safest traveling at night, given that if you stick to the roads and don't stay in one place too long and don't try to draw attention to yourself, you probably can get by without any problems. You think it'd be a greater risk having Gertrude try and make this trek on her lonesome, unless you do decide to pay for mercenaries or guards, in which case we can go down that road. So who's leading or who is making these decisions?
I thought we were making them together.
That was the impression I was under.
Okay. So do you want to hire your guards so that Gertrude can travel during the day, or do you want to stick to the night?
It is a risk, which Cormac will interject as well. I mean, he thinks it's a good idea if they must travel during the day, but the guards, it risks the guards, going into the carriage unbidden and finding the packages there, namely themselves.
And then everyone dies.
We can simply dominate them so they don't do so. It's not the first time I've done something similar.
Quite so.
It's a ham-fisted way to handle it, but it'd work.
You say that, but it has proven itself effective.
So what is our decision then? Travel only by night on the second half? Or hire guards?
I would rather maintain our current haste rather than having our speed for the latter half of the journey.
Again, we can go with guards. Though if we do get them, I will be very adamant about dominating them so they don't do anything they shouldn't.
Don't think I'm not agreeable to it. I certainly don't want to be dragged out into the sunlight.
And by doing this, we will prevent that.
And if need be, we can relieve him of the memory of the journey at the end.
And I suppose it's decided. We take our chances with mercenary types.
All right. You think 10 men would be enough for your carriage to sufficiently dissuade the average group of brigands from waylaying it, given what you know about, especially what Elenid knows about appealing targets, having a good 10 to 12 men with a single carriage that doesn't obviously carry any loot. They would probably assume it was some kind of person of gentry, usually not worth the hassle, usually not worth the rent. Especially if there are no other obvious supplies. So, I suppose you could all pitch in and pay these men, in which case I will take a resources roll, I'll say standard difficulty, and with 5 successes from the total of you, then you will have enough to pay these men for the journey. You just barely have enough together to pay these men for a fortnight's of service. You find one of these mercenary captains in one of the taverns, and he agrees to escort you all the way to Chester. As for convincing them to not open the carriage during the day, are you focusing on the captain, or do you want to try this on all of them?
Focus on the captain. That's what she did last time.
Okay. And Cormac will apply the others with presence.
Okay. What level of Dominate are you using? Elenid.
Let's see. Because I have 4 levels to mess around with.
You do?
Level 2 should be sufficient.
Level 2 is what I used last time for it, yeah. We got in a little miniature debate on if I could use level 2 for it last time.
That's pretty much what it's for.
Yep. Level 2.
Alright. So you will be using subjugation, so I'll take a manipulation leadership. Difficulty 6. To ingrain in this mercenary captain to keep himself and everyone else away from the carriage contents during the day. You feel like it succeeds. You feel like you have gotten this message. He definitely understands maybe not the gravity of how much you want this to, but he definitely seems to nod in agreement, understanding.
Alright. Job's done on that front.
And Cormac, you want to work on the soldiers to with your presence?
A couple of the more personable ones who he thinks or will be able to keep the others in line.
Okay.
He will entrance them both.
Alright. And I will take an appearance empathy. Difficulty is going to be 4. You get the attention of some of these men, and they definitely seem eager to serve you and agree with you, and they seem to like you a lot from your interaction with them. Definitely very agreeable when you speak to them, especially afterwards. At least for now.
Yeah, it'll only last a day or two, but he can always try again later.
That's true. Alright. Here's the only hang-up. Now that you have mercenaries, they are not going to want to march day and night.
Of course.
So while you are more protected, you are slowed down.
Yes. As such, at least while going through that forest, traveling during the day would be safer.
Yes, it would. So, your trip is going to take about 3 weeks, with the added time of stopping for the mercenaries to rest during the night for the entirety of the trip. But you have the added protection, and you feel confident this will dissuade the guards, or rather the brigands, from attacking your carriage during the day with nothing but Gertrude there. And so you set on your journey, leaving Lincoln and heading south, around the Pennines and Nottingham Forest. Meanwhile, Robert, you spend about a week traveling with your retinue, heading south, back towards London. Your trip... Go ahead.
Is the, No, I was planning on stopping at, if I recall, the Port of Boston to, see if I could pull information out of the worshipful mercers.
Absolutely. These men are under your command. They don't question what you're doing or why you're doing it. They just assume that you know what you're doing. So you don't have to worry about them much.
Alright, so while he's there, he'll also procure a ship to London.
You can do that. You hear when you go to the docks and inquire about ferries. The next one coming up from London that's coming back will not be there for another few days. And then it's going to be a few days sailing south. So it's kind of a wash whether you travel by sea or by land at that point.
About the same amount of time then.
Roughly.
And how much time would be spent heading over to Boston?
You look at this map again. Not terribly long. I want to say... Oh yeah, not long at all. Number of hours, less than half a day. It's pretty trivial.
Alright, he'll stop there then and definitely find out about the ships. But while he's there, he's going to find someone with the worshipful mercers to speak with.
Sure. Let me look at your sheet. You've dabbled in the merchant trade, not quite as successfully as perhaps Thomas has, but enough to know the offices to go to and the areas to look, the people to ask. So, within the first evening, you find out where the main office in the Boston port is for the Worshipful Company of Mercers. Although it's difficult to get a word in edgewise during the evening, as they seem only to operate during the day. How did you want to go about interacting with them or getting information?
How difficult is it to find someone to talk to?
In theory, you could use your men to stake the place out, or you could stake it out yourself and try and catch one of these men leaving the office. There are a number of ways you could go about trying to get a hold of one of these agents. These are true soldiers. They're not going to question what you're doing. They just follow a chain of command.
Okay. Are the soldiers following me around when I discover that the next ship is not going to be for several days?
Not if you don't want them to be.
Alright then. Yeah, I won't take them for that. As for getting into the actual company of mercers, who would have access to their old records?
Well, in theory, the building itself, which is a fairly simple and unassuming two-story wooden building in the middle of town, there's barely any signage at all that it belongs to the Mercer Company. You have to assume there's files of their own in there, depending on what records you want. What were you looking for?
That's all, huh? Any accounts in Lincoln. But to get in, Do they have guards or anyone working overnight?
You were looking for accounts? Like transactions?
Yes.
You think some of the transactions might be held by possibly the mayor of Boston, if he was doing any kind of taxation or had any kind of arrangement with them for the services, for allowing them to work there and basically pay tribute to be in Boston. He might have some information on how much is coming in based on their, percentile revenue, but it would be far more informative to actually get inside. And it seems that they do have a single guard at the door.
Single guard. Yeah, okay. No one else.
Not that you can see.
All right, then he'll ask the guard if anyone works during the night.
Only himself.
Let's see here. Well then, in that case, we'll convince the guard to let us in using some powers of the blood. Level 3 presence. Entrancement.
Okay. Actually, look at my map again. Alright, so you want to use level 3 entrancement?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, take an appearance empathy. Difficulty is going to be 5. Oh wow. He seems head over heels and on serving you, and you feel like you have a very strong grasp on this man, almost fanatical. He seems eager to do what you would like, and eager to help in any way, answer questions if you need them.
They'll have him open the door and ask him if he knows anything about older accounts, recalling to the year when he was first aware of Gaeton and his grandsire's dealings.
He doesn't know anything about what you're talking about, but he opens the door for you.
Okay, fair enough. Assumed he didn't know anything anyway.
Yeah, you get the impression he's paid to stand there all night, and that's about it.
Alright, he's going to look around, see if anything's dated. See how they have their things organized. Is it by region, by date, stuff, such and such.
You have the reports they have for the Port of Boston. There seems not to be anything more global or regional. It's very specific to this port. And interestingly, when you go into and you find, obviously, where the records are being kept, there's a lot of space. There's a lot of shelves, a lot of bookshelves, that is, and a lot of space to hold many volumes of text. But the only reports you find are within the last week.
Alright, well, heading outside, he'll speak with the guard again. Asking him if he knows where most of the documents are taken.
He has no idea where these documents are taken, but he'll open the door for you again.
Right. Well, Robert's going to chalk this one up to a dead end, but before he does, he's going to learn the guard's name and he'll tell him that he would be most pleased if this guard kept doing his duty, but paid a little bit more attention to where such documents are taken.
His name is Lorenzo DeSanto. He tells you that he really doesn't see much about these documents you're talking about. He is paid to arrive right as what he assumes has to be the manager is leaving, and he stays there guarding it until dawn. But he's never seen files like what you're talking about being moved out, or moved in, or discussed, or anything.
How difficult would it be for him to work the day shift? I'll put in the question for him.
There is no day shift guard. They don't need one. They just operate during the day. They must trust the city guard a lot.
Alright, well, he's been most helpful then.
He's going to leave this man, and mayor's office may be the next option, as you've mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
That's where he will go then.
All right. Of course, in the dead of night, this is also going to be locked.
Any guards around?
There are a couple guards here.
A couple?
Mm-hmm. This is the mayor's manse. He also holds his office here and study, so you have to imagine, aldermen, other city officials probably come here to meet with him, and he also probably lives here.
Robert asked the guards if the mayor is ever active during the night.
They don't talk to you. They'll tell you to piss off.
Alright, he'll just leave. Whatever.
Okay. Thwarted but not defeated, what will Robert do next?
The mayor's manner
Nah. So many options, so many things to think on.
You're gonna storm the mayor's office with your men. Got it.
The mind did go there for a moment. Oh. No. That would not be the proper way to do things. However, he is now at a loss. He's going to decide he'll probably need he would need more time than he would have available in Boston to make contacts. What time do we arrive in Boston? This will be important, I guess.
I'm gonna say you arrive fairly early since you've accomplished quite a bit.
Okay. In that case, it's probably reasonable to say a night should be spent here before continuing travel.
Are you gonna
And he'll relay this to the guards
Okay.
and get a proper lodging at a inn or something.
Do you want them to continue the journey during the day or the evening? Or force march them?
I think it would probably be safe to travel in the day, as they would go faster that way.
That's true.
So yeah, he'll give him a night's rest and at the inn, he'll ask some of the locals if they know anyone who works at the mayor's office or manor.
Sure. I will take a charisma empathy difficulty 8. Uh-oh. Not a botch.
Nope.
You get some weird looks. You think you're being taken for some kind of sneak thief or some ne'er-do-well. A few people whisper some curses under their breath and shy away from you, not wanting to associate with someone of ill repute.
Rough night.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to attempt in Boston?
Nah, we're done here.
Okay. Your men rest in Boston for the evening, and at dawn, just as you're falling asleep, the men set off. You begin your journey south, which takes about a week, assuming you don't do any more detours. Do you mean to go straight to London now?
Yep.
Okay. you make your way back into London with your 20 men, which is less intimidating a sight than 50. And on the 7th evening, you find that your carriage has been set up and stabled as your men are ready not far away, and you're met as you exit the carriage by Sergeant Sears, who is ready to do as you need. Waiting for your command.
All right. Where was the prince typically at?
He holds court in the Undercroft, St. Mary's Undercroft, which is in Westminster. Although he doesn't usually just sit there, that's where he holds court, though.
And where does he usually sit?
There's nowhere he exactly just kind of sits and hangs out, but for simplicity's sake, it wouldn't be very difficult for you to arrange for a message, go into Elysium, and finding someone to relay that you request an audience with the prince. If that's what you want to do, you can probably anticipate, based on Jean-Marc, that he might already be expecting you.
And then Elysium is the first stop.
Okay. You are indeed greeted by Cash, the relatively new sheriff, and he tells you that he will deliver this message. And when you're in Elysium, I'll take a perception empathy from you. Standard difficulty. Okay, 2 successes. The air around Elysium when you enter is tense. It grows quiet on your entrance, and you recall it being a bit different. Whereas when you entered here with the Gauntlet previously, there was interest and some curiosity. Now there's almost terror or concern. There's an anxiety in the room when you enter, as you feel the eyes upon you, people giving you some space.
And the guards are with me during this entrance? Or did they remain outside?
They await your command. If you want them to come into Elysium, all 20 of them, that would be a hell of a show.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want him to do that. So he'll have them wait outside and enter alone, which I'm assuming the atmosphere is still there.
Yes, absolutely. So it sounds like the message is relayed based on what Cash tells you. And while in Elysium, you see Bella Matea is in attendance, and she's watching you very cautiously from a distance. She doesn't seem to have her bubbly smile or confidence as she often does. There's no sight of Amelia at her side.
To Robert, this is fine. He's going to approach with a serious look. Good evening.
Is it good? I couldn't tell.
That remains to be seen.
Quite.
Is it straight to business then?
I thought I might ask you the same thing. What with you bringing your men into this city as you have?
Yes, I have been commanded to find Amelia.
Oh, she's quite found. Cash saw to that some nights ago.
Is that so? Where is she currently?
Why don't you ask him?
Suppose I shall. Do you know where Cash is at?
You actually just spoke to Cash. That's how you got that message relayed.
Huh? Wait, what? I'm so confused right now.
When you entered Elysium, basically for your purpose here, you spoke with Cash, who basically told you Ambrose is expecting you and you can anticipate court happening very soon, probably within the next night.
Oh, I thought that was like the message that was relayed and I hadn't spoken to anyone. That's funny. Okay.
Yeah, that's the gist of your visit with Cash when you get to Elysium.
Oh, in that case. In that case, yeah, if he's expected, he'll thank Bella for the information and head out towards the meeting with Prince Ambrose, I'm assuming.
She forces a smile, but it's brief and faint. You can tell she's not pretending very hard here. And you make your way out of Elysium. In the direction, I assume, of St. Mary Undercroft? The
Yes.
Prince's Court? Okay. We will open our scene there. After your cold chat with Bella Matea. So you return as you previously came to this same court, St. Mary's Undercroft, where the prince holds his audiences. And you're there apparently before he is, or before Cash, although it seems a few Cainites are here in attendance in anticipation of something. You're not waiting too long. Maybe half an hour before you see Cash, Genevieve, and this tall scholar kind of man with this black rod approaching down the pews. Ambrose walks past you, stepping up to the dais. He turns his back to you as he does so. You can see his face is stony and grim. Not unlike when you last saw him, although there is a quiet anger in his eyes you don't remember seeing.
Robert will narrow his eyes at this a bit. I'd go through proper courtly procedures.
He eventually turns to you, and that anger in his eyes is more visible. He stands there in silence, and then he looks beyond you, back to the hall, back to the entrance, and you can hear the sound of clanking iron, heavy boots, and what sounds like shackles of some kind.
Robert will turn his head to see what has just come inside.
You see Cash, and he seems to be dragging Amelia, who is staked and also thoroughly shackled and chained, her wrists and her ankles chained up in heavy metal, and he's dragging her through the pews very unceremoniously. Her dress is torn and there's a small amount of blood where the stake has pierced her, although it's not bleeding or anything. She does look a bit worse for wear. And he passes by you without looking at you and lets go of the chain, letting her torpid form fall at the edge of the dais as Ambrose looks down at it impassionately, and then back to you. Not many nights ago, the entirety of the Gauntlet stood here, in my presence, and not one of them told me of the encounter between yourselves and not only a band of roaming, unchecked Cainites, but of Robert Dufour himself, the very target which you were sent to detain for the Covenant. Not one of you. Tell me, Lord de Vere, why is that?
That is because it was still under investigation. We were not willing to share details of an incomplete one.
Not willing. Not willing to share details with a Covenant Prince. Had I known of this meeting, I would have rode out there myself a fortnight ago. Now would Dufour and his supporters could be anywhere! And his fangs bare, and he suddenly slams his fist into the ground in front of you. The ground shakes, and stone fractures as dust escapes.
Robert's eye will twitch as he straightens up a bit at this display.
He recovers, pulling his fist back and standing tall again. The hiding of this meeting and the protection of this witness approaches treason. Not a month into your service and already I question our selection for the Gauntlet.
Apologies that you feel that way.
I do not want your apologies. His fangs flash again.
Then what would ease your ire?
Do as we command, as you were instructed. Dufour is the target, as are these rebels, this band of anarchs. Proceed with your men to the castle of Salisbury with the prisoner for detention. By now, Jean-Marc will have sent word for Ragnar. She will see to the interrogation of the prisoner, and with luck we will have this one called Gabriel brought to her as well.
Very well.
As I asked before, I will ask again. Is there anything else?
Robert looks thoughtful for a moment. Well, since you've asked, does perhaps seem that the ghoul who was witness to the attack, from what we've seen in the Cassandra's vision, something that may have not been relayed to you, does not match up with his testimony.
And what is that testimony?
And Robert will relay to Prince Ambrose the events that they pulled from Cornelius as well as Simone.
So you think a prior is involved?
That we do.
Or was? His eyes go off to the side in thought.
Because of these inconsistencies, we wanted to remain quiet until we could discern more. I must admit, my own loose tongue is what prompted my grandsire's actions.
What actions has Jean-Marc done?
Have you not received his... Well, certainly you have, but on top of that, he has sent riders out to search for these rebellious Canaanites.
Indeed. As have I, and likely other Covenant princes.
Yes, he's very nearly emptied his retinue in this endeavor, as I suspect every other prince is pouring adequate resources into this.
If they dare show their face, we will fight them. As for this prior, he shakes his head. It's difficult to say. It may mean nothing. And yet... Sebastian does have many connections. The fief of Norwick is known as a kind of haven for them. The priors are far from any kind of hive mind, but I wonder if there wouldn't be someone who knew something there.
Does sound like a start.
I shall send some of my own agents to Norwick. Your priority is this prisoner. After that, you may do as you see fit to further the investigation.
Understood. I do wish to at least ask, what is to be her fate?
What can be pulled from her mind will be done so. I am sure of that. Afterwards, her fate is folly to me. I will leave that to Ragnar.
Very good. And Robert will bow.
He nods. You make your way out.
With nothing more to say, Robert will take his departure from the court.
You turn and you're a few steps down the pews as you hear him call out to you. And know this, Lord de Vere. We have replaced one gauntlet. We can replace another if need be. Should we find it wanting. Relay what I have said to the gauntlet.
I am certain your words will ring true in our hearts.
He's silent at that. And you're allowed to leave. And as you do, you see Tom Lefoy at the far back, this strange jester. He seems to be watching you, sitting up. But there's no smile on his face. He actually looks sad.
Robert will regard him curiously.
He takes off his small cap and holds it in front of him and kind of bows his head solemnly.
What's with the gloom mood?
Tom Lefoy does not jest at times like these. He does to test.
Robert gives him a solemn nod.
You're interrupted as Cash moves up past you, dragging the chains of Amelia, and hands the reins over to you.
Robert will look him in the eyes and nod as he takes the chains.
His face is stoic, and after handing it over to you, he passes by.
After that, he'll get her over his shoulders and carry her out.
All right. You carry her out, and fortunately, there are not many people in Westminster, and you're able to leave the area surrounding the palace. And actually, as you do so, there is a covered wagon and some of what you recognize as Ambrose's men, some of his men-at-arms. They seem to be anticipating your need for cover.
Good. Robert will head towards them. And he'll instruct them to head where his men were, and once they're regrouped, he'll begin his journey to the castle. he was told to go to.
As expected, they deliver her in this covered wagon back towards the inn by the gate which you entered from, and she is discreetly transferred from one to the other carriage as your men secure her in place. And you see as she's moved, there's a look of surprise and horror on her face, frozen in her torpid form.
Robert will close his eyes and whispers he's sorry before giving the signal to continue on the journey.
And continue they do. Your retinue departs with Amelia secured and yourself. Sergeant Sear is leading the way as you leave London with your prisoner. And the scene fades, coming to black, watching your retinue marching off from London into the darkness. And we will end here, end the session. I think this is a good breaking point that we can pick up on next week. Good game.
For Amelia.
Poor Amelia. She got the short end of it.
Well, she got the pointy end of it.
That too. What'd you think, Sarah? Can't get you to stop talking about it.
Oh, Miss Chatterbox over there.
Well, to be fair, once it got out that she was a witness, she was done for anyway.
Hard to put that back in the box. But I enjoyed it. I'm glad we ended up playing. I feel a lot much better than I did at the start of the game. And much better than that before an hour ago. Prior. So, wish we could have played a little bit longer, but I just wasn't up for that first hour. So I'm glad we got some in.
Oh, yeah.
And next week, we will conclude with the latter half of the trip towards Chester and your arrival in that city, and Robert's arrival at the Castle of Salisbury to deliver Amelia. So we'll do entertaining roleplay tonight. Let's start with Robert.
You come back to me?
Yes. Go to Thomas.
I'm going to give it to Robert. He at least tried to salvage the situation. It was pretty far gone already, but I think maybe he'll soften the blow a little bit.
Okay. Element. Sarah.
I am going to give it to Thomas for the entire bit of responding to him being scolded.
Cool. Cormac.
I'm going to give it to Robert this time. That whole scene with Ambrose was really cool. him trying to maintain his composure when he's being yelled at by a very angry prince.
With a lot of potence.
Mm-hmm. And we're back to Robert.
I'll give it to Thomas for speaking with Robert's grandsire, letting him know that little misinformation he put out there.
Very cool. That's dose for Robert, dose for Thomas, and 2 experience all around. So we will pick it up next week, and hopefully I will not be sick as a dog for the first hour, and get a full game in.
Sounds good.
Cool. Good game. See you guys later.
Nice.
See ya.